Britain built some of the most dangerous, most powerful, and most underrated muscle cars of the 1960s. Not in Detroit, not in Maranello. In Thames Ditton, Blackpool, West Bromwich, and Cambridge. 10 cars, 10 stories. And the one sitting at number 1 was so rare, so brutally powerful, that most people have never even heard of it. Before we jump in, hit that subscribe button and ride along with us. Let's get into it. Number 10, Sunbeam Tiger MK1 1964. To look at a Sunbeam Alpine sitting at the curb, you would never suspect a thing. It looked like a perfectly sensible, rather pretty little roadster. Neat lines, modest proportions. The sort of car a bank clerk might park outside a semi-detached in Surrey without raising an eyebrow. That, of course, was entirely the point. Underneath that innocent exterior sat a Ford 260 cubic inch V8, developed in collaboration with Carroll Shelby, the same man already responsible for something far more savage further up this list. The engineering challenge was considerable. The Alpine's engine bay was never designed to house a V8. Factory workers at the Roots assembly plant reportedly had to use a sledgehammer on the firewall simply to clear enough space for the engine to sit. That is not a rumor. That is how it was done. The result was a car that could embarrass almost anything encountered on a 1960s British motorway. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody expected it. A sleeper before the word existed. And if this is where the list starts, pay close attention to where it ends. Number 9, AC Cobra 289, 1962. The Cobra is often claimed by America, and the argument is understandable. The engine is American. The concept came from Carroll Shelby. But the car itself, the chassis, the suspension, the hand-rolled aluminum body, was designed and built by AC Cars in Thames Ditton, Surrey. This is a British car with an American heart, and that distinction matters. The 289, referring to the cubic inch displacement of its Ford the Fifth 8, was the original and in many ways the finest version of the Cobra. Later cars grew heavier and more powerful, but the 289 was the one that had balance. It was light, it was direct, and the feedback through the steering wheel was immediate in a way that no modern car can replicate. It established the blueprint for the Euro-American hybrid performance car, a formula that others would spend the rest of the decade attempting to copy. Most of them appear further up this list, and each one raises the stakes a little higher. Number 8, Jensen Interceptor MK1 1966. Jensen Motors operated out of West Bromwich in the West Midlands, which is not a place most people associate with grand touring elegance. But the Interceptor that emerged from their factory in 1966 was genuinely breathtaking. The body was designed by Vignale in Italy, and the combination of that sweeping coachwork with the enormous 6.3-liter Chrysler Big Block V8 beneath the bonnet produced something that had no real equivalent in Britain at the time. This was a car for a particular kind of man. Someone who wanted the leather seats and the walnut dashboard, the refinement and the civility, but who also wanted, when the road opened up ahead of him, to feel something violent happen. The Interceptor delivered on both counts. It looked like a luxury yacht and sounded like a drag racer. Triple-digit cruising speeds were entirely within its comfort zone, and it achieved them with ease that its more sporting rivals could not match. Here is something most people do not know. The factory that built this car also built something sitting at number 4 on this list that changed the entire history of the motor car, not just British cars. Every car. Number 7, Lola T70 MK, the third road car, 1967. Lola Cars was based in Huntingdon, and by the mid-1960s, they had built one of the most respected racing operations in the world. The T70 had competed at Le Mans, had run at the front of major sports car races across 2 continents, and had proven itself on circuits where reliability and outright performance were the only currency that mattered. In 1967, Lola produced the MK3 coupe variant, and a small number of these were built in road-legal specification. The recipe was unchanged in the racing version. A Chevrolet V8 mounted in a chassis that weighed almost nothing, surrounded by bodywork that prioritized aerodynamics over comfort. There was very little between the driver and the road. No softening, no compromise, no concession to the idea that driving should be relaxing. Most road cars of the 1960s asked you to enjoy the journey. The Lola T70 asked you to survive it. It remains one of the most extreme things ever licensed for use on a public road anywhere in the world. And yet, it is only number 7. The cars above it are harder, rarer, and in some cases, genuinely more dangerous. Number 6, TVR Griffith 400, 1964. TVR was building small, lightweight sports cars in Blackpool, and by 1964 they had established a reputation for producing cars that were fast, fragile, and occasionally terrifying. The Griffith was all 3 of those things, and then some. The The starting point was TVR's existing Grand Tourer chassis, a small and relatively simple backbone frame, with a wheelbase shorter than that of many modern hatchbacks. Into this chassis, they dropped a Ford 289 high-performance V8, producing somewhere in the region of 271 horsepower. The power-to-weight ratio that resulted was enough to shame Ferraris that cost several times as much. The problem was that the chassis was never really designed for this much power, and the Griffith developed a reputation as a genuinely difficult car that kept pointed in the right direction. Its nickname among those who drove it was the Widowmaker. That nickname was not assigned lightly, and it was not the only British car of this era to earn a name like that through pure, unmanageable force. The further up this list you go, the more that pattern repeats. Number 5, Aston Martin DBS, 1967. By 1967, Aston Martin had a problem that any manufacturer would be grateful for. Their DB5 and DB6 were considered among the most beautiful cars in the world, refined and elegant machines that carried a certain famous British secret agent through several films. But the company had a new engine in development, a vast V8 unit, and it needed a body large enough and strong enough to contain it. The DBS was that car. Where the DB6 was graceful, the DBS was purposeful. It was wider, square at the jaw, with a fastback roofline that borrowed more from American muscle car thinking than from traditional Aston design. The straight-six engine it launched with was a temporary measure. Every proportion, every dimension, every structural decision in that car was made with one purpose: to house the V8 that was coming. The DBS was Aston Martin serving notice. The era of pure elegance was over. Something heavier was on its way. Number 4, Jensen FF, 1966. The Jensen FF looked almost identical to the Interceptor. Same Vignale body, same Chrysler V8, same West Bromwich postcode. If you stood the two cars side by side, you would struggle to tell them apart. But beneath that familiar exterior was something that had never existed before in any production car anywhere in the world. Ferguson Formula 4-wheel drive. Mechanical, sophisticated, and genuinely effective. In 1966, no other road car offered this technology. Not Ferrari, not Porsche, not anyone. The FF also incorporated Dunlop Maxarette anti-lock braking, another world first for a production road car. The practical consequence of all this technology was straightforward. You could plant your right foot on a wet British road, and the car would simply go. No drama, no correction, no tail stepping wide. For a car producing that much torque from that Chrysler V8 in the rain, in Britain, that was not just impressive, it was revolutionary. Every four-wheel drive performance car built since 1966 owes something to this machine. Most people have never heard of it. That is a story of British engineering in a single sentence. Number 3, Lister Jaguar Knobbly road version. Brian Lister built cars in Cambridge, and his collaboration with Jaguar produced one of the most viscerally exciting racing machines of the late 1950s and early 1960s. The Knobbly, named for the distinctive bumps and curves of its aluminium bodywork, used the engine from the legendary Jaguar D-Type, a straight-six of considerable power and exceptional character. A small number of road-legal versions were produced, and to drive one was to experience British performance without any filter whatsoever. No sound deadening worth mentioning. No softness in the suspension. No distance between you and what the car was doing. Every input was immediate. Every response was honest. And the noise from that Jaguar engine at full throttle was something that stayed with people for the rest of their lives. We are now in the top 3. These are not simply fast cars. These are cars that define what the words British muscle actually meant before anyone had thought to use that phrase. And the 2 remaining entries on this list represent the absolute peak of what this country quietly, and with very little fanfare, managed to build. Number 2, Broadspeed Jaguar XJ12C. Ralph Broad ran an engineering firm with a reputation for extracting performance from cars that Jaguar themselves had never imagined. When he got his hands on the XJ12C, the pillarless coupe version of Jaguar's flagship saloon, the results were extraordinary. The standard XJ12C was already a fast car, powered by Jaguar's 5.3-liter V12, one of the smoothest and most powerful engines fitted to any British car of the era. Broad's modifications transformed it into something else entirely. Wide body arches, suspension revisions, and full exploitation of that V12's capabilities turned a refined Grand Tourer into a genuine brute. The Broadspeed versions went on to become famous in touring car racing, but the road specification cars were the purest expression of the concept. An enormous, sophisticated engine inside a body that had been built to fight. It is number 2, which means only one thing remains. And the car at number 1 was built in numbers so small and sits so far outside the mainstream conversation that even dedicated enthusiasts sometimes look blank when the name is mentioned. Number 1, AC Frua ACMA 200, 1965. 81 cars. That is the entire production run of the AC Frua, also known internally as the MA 200, and that number alone makes it the rarest car on this list by a considerable margin. But rarity is not why it sits at number 1. The AC Frua took the proven AC chassis and clothed it in coachwork designed by Pietro Frua in Italy, producing a longer, more luxurious body than the Cobra's aggressive roadster shape. It looked composed. It looked refined. It looked in a way that only certain 1960s cars managed. Genuinely beautiful. And then you started the engine. Beneath that elegant exterior sat a Ford 28 cubic inch big block V8, displacing 7 full liters. The performance this engine delivered in a car of the Frua's weight was not gradual or progressive. It was immediate, massive, and entirely uncompromising. Those who drove it spoke of acceleration that felt less like forward motion and more like being struck from behind by something large and determined. 81 were made. The people who own them rarely discuss them. For most of the decade since, the AC Frua has remained the great secret of British muscle, the most exclusive, the most extreme, and arguably the most complete expression of what this island was capable of building during one of the most extraordinary automotive decades in its history. Nothing came after at this level. Nothing needed to.